If you're a small business owner, you'll know just what it's like to be the chief everything officer. HR, payroll, employee benefits. Well, Gusto can do all of that for you. Gusto is online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use. It's quick and simple to switch to Gusto. Just transfer your existing data to get up and running fast. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedonsoccer and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's gusto.com/lockedonsoccer.
The world's biggest soccer tournament has arrived, and you can trade the entire tournament on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade every match from the opening stage all the way to the final. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code CUP26 to get $10 when you trade 10. KALSHI Kalshi. Trade the beautiful game. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
The entire summer of soccer is on Prize Picks, all 48 countries in every matchup. And if you rep your side before the round of 16 on Prize Picks, you can win a trip to the finals in New York. It's the biggest tournament ever, which means there's even more opportunities to cash in while you root for your favorite national sides and global soccer stars. Download the app today and use code CUP26 to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Download the app today and use code CUP26 to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app.
Hello and welcome to Haway The Podcast. It's Martin here, and we're back with an episode of Roker Rewind for you today. And it's a fitting time to be doing one of these two as Sunderland's players, at least those not involved in the World Cup, back in pre-season training this week. So we thought we'd have a look at some of the tours of the US that would be on the past, including one particular trip in 1980 to Miami, which, as we'll discover, was a little bit of an eventful one. Of course, it wouldn't be an episode of Roker Rewind without the two top Sunderland storytellers in tow. So first of all, we'll say good morning to Kelvin Beattie. Hello, Kelvin.
Good morning, Martin. How are you this morning? You'll
I'm
all
very
be
good.
chirpy
Very good.
little lads this morning, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so we are recording this a mere hour or two after England's brilliant victory over Mexico, aren't we? Kelvin's very happy about that. Andrew's looking through bleary eyes, having watched the match, but it's it was good. I don't often get really carried away with England games, but towards the end there, I was feeling all the pressure and all the stress. And Kelvin, even somebody who passionately follows Scotland, you must have seen a few positives with that result from England, surely.
Yeah, I was tucked up in my bed with my hot water bottle. No, I did watch the game, and it was an incident-packed game. And I have to say, I was really impressed with the Azteca as well. Doesn't that look like the stadium to go and watch a bit of football in? Yeah.
It certainly does. They'll be on the bucket list for a lot. And I think, we're talking about games in America in this podcast, and we're going to be maybe mentioning a couple that were in Mexico at some point or other. But Andrew's with us this morning as well. Good morning, Andrew.
Hello, mate. Hello, everyone. It's, as always, lovely to see you. And yeah, we've got another Roker Rewind, and you just try and stop me. I could have been up all night watching England. I would have still got out of my pit to come and catch up with you two.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Obviously, I'm very used to watching matches in the middle of the night involving Sunderland and operating on a couple of hours sleep. And it's amazing what a victory does. If you've won, it's fine the next day. If you've lost, it's the worst, longest bloody day you'll experience. But there we go. So hopefully we're all okay. Now, Andrew, we're covering US trips, in particular the 1980 post-season trip. Now, why are we covering this today? You let the listeners in on our rationale for this one.
Well, I had a little test at this because Gav asked me on a pod yesterday. He was saying, so what have you got lined up? And I think just Sunderland and America at the moment, there just seems to be so many links. Obviously, there's the World Cup and Sunderland have got so many players who have been over in America, but there's this mad link up with Graceland. You know, it's been a week or so since that Elvis kit was launched, but it is still just taking a bit of getting used to that we're now, you know, in an official collaboration with the estate of Elvis Presley. And of course, you said this week, Martin, some of the players are coming back to pre-season training. Well, it'll not be long before they're all jumping on a plane, and Regis Labris and the group have got 3 games lined up in America in the coming weeks. And you know what it's like. As soon as Sunderland are in action, even if it's a pre-season friendly, we're all going to be watching these games and talking about them and taking an interest in the tour.
No, that's absolutely right. And I was just talking to somebody earlier, and even despite all of the football going on in the World Cup, I said, I'm ready now. I can't wait for the real stuff to restart. So this is going to whet our appetites a little bit for what lies ahead. Now, of course, Andrew said, Kelvin, we are going to America in this pre-season, but it's not the first time we've been there. I think there was some tours in the 50s and 60s, wasn't it, that Sunderland famously or infamously went on over
Well,
to the States?
excuse me. I think there were 2 pretty contrasting tours in 1955 and then in 1967. In 1955, what was known the Sunderland team that was known as the Bank of England team took off to America at the end of what was actually their most successful season. That Bank of England team, they wouldn't have known that then, but it actually was the most successful season for the Bank of England team prior to that tour. And typical of the team that organised quite a leisurely tour, although they played 9 games, there was lots. There seemed to be an awful lot of leisurely and social time going on. And they were based in a 5-star central New York hotel. And they played in places like Brooklyn, Philadelphia, Montreal, Winnipeg, and Detroit. So for people that know that geography, it wasn't too scattered all over the place. They weren't having to travel hundreds of miles. The games were fairly condensed. And the idea was that they would help grow the game in America. But the tour party, just so that you know, and I always loved this. I love that banter about the airport, our most local airport, you know. And it must have been going on then, because they didn't leave from Newcastle Airport. They trekked all the way up to Prestwick in Glasgow and left at 2:30 in the morning on KLM flight 605 for New York. For anybody that's into that kind of detail, and I mean, there were a couple of canny things that happened in this tour. Just bear with me, because there were a couple of funny things that sort of went on, especially if you bear in mind the characters that would have been there. For the people that don't know, that aren't acquainted with that Bank of England team, we had the likes of Shaq, Billy Elliott, Ted Purdon, Ken Chisholm, Cannonball Fleming, who we've all spoken about, and Willie Fraser, the Scottish international keeper. Stan Anderson was there, Beeb Daniel, and Big George Aitken, and then those 2 fullbacks that played for us for such a long time in this team, Joe MacDonald and Jack Headley. And young Billy Bingham was there as well, and had quite a tour himself. They won 5, drew 4 of their 9 league games, so they were undefeated. But there was a touring Huddersfield team, and that were there at the same time, and they played them 4 times in the tour, right? Now the first game, it's really funny when you sort of start reading the sparse details that are there about the games, and there's actually some letters that you can find online from Bill Murray. Sends these letters home that were published as well, that give an interesting insight into what the goings on in the tour, and also him as a manager, directing the traffic and definitely leading the tour. Anyway, they play 4 games against Huddersfield. In the first one, they win the first one 3-2. But it seems to have been a canny friendly game. By the time they get to the 4th game, there's a real intensity about the games. And in that 4th game, our renowned, he was renowned as quite a hard player, Billy Elliott, he KOs one of the Huddersfield players in a scrap on the touchline. And before Bill Murray can get to him, George Aitken gets to him, and big George Aitken, he's a massive bloke, George Aitken, pulls him off, and he's got a hold of him and won't let him go, and Elliott's got the fighting fury on him, and he's this Huddersfield boys flying spark out. The rest of the Huddersfield team are sort of charging in. There's a bit of a melee, and Aitken's got a hold of Elliott, and eventually Elliott sort of stops fighting. He says, I'm all right. You can let me go. Elliott lets him go, and Aitken lets him go, and Elliott flies across and decks another boy. So you've got this. There's so much for friendlies and friendly tours. It was bonkers. By that point, Bill Murray arrives and leads Elliott away from the melee. But apart from that, they seemed to get themselves about. They were based in the central New York hotel. It seemed quite leisurely. Lots of stuff about going to the baseball and going to see the racing and the Empire State Building, and a bit of time spent in the nightclub across the road from the hotel, and it seems to have been quite leisurely, quite professional visits to this hotel. Nobody was getting absolutely outrageous, but there does seem to have been a dalliance between Ken Chisholm and the marvelously looking Marilyn Monroe in that hotel. So, all in all, a very interesting, a very
memorable
bonding tour for that party, and you would have imagined it would have set them up for the next season, having had a fairly good season. You would have imagined it would have set them up for the 55-56 season to come, which I think must be part of why do teams go on tour? Is that sort of part of the deal, that it brings the team together, and hopefully it's a good start for the team. So a canny little tour that it seemed, the 1955 one. Unlike, as I say, the 1967 one, where Sunderland went to the USA and played as the Vancouver Royal Canadians in a 12-game mini league. I mean, it sounds remarkable, this, when you think that we're in the first division back here, and we'll go away for the best part of 6 weeks away and play in this mini league. And that again was designed to grow the game in North America. The base for people, there will be people that are listening that have been to Vancouver, and it is a beautiful, beautiful place to be based, and they would play against teams from, I'm not going to name what the franchise teams were called, but there was teams from Wolves, Stoke, Hibs, Aberdeen, Dundee United, Glentoran, Shamrock Rovers, a team from Brazil called Banu, Cerro from Uruguay, Cagliari from Italy, and Den Haag, who were their first game. Den Haag would be who they would play. And they would play in the Western Division. Now, that tour did mean a bit of travel. They travelled to games in Washington, Chicago, Toronto, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Detroit. So by my reckoning, they definitely had to do a bit more travelling, which I think it did add something to the furore. That team, unlike the Bank of England team, had just finished 17 in their 17th in their second season back in the top flight, and we had a divided dressing room and a struggling manager in Ian McCall. And it struck me as I was looking at this, the way that the first tour went in 1955 and the second tour went in 1967. There seems to have been a world of difference to what all went on there. One of the reasons this tour might not have gone as well was the players that were missing. So Charlie Hurley, Martin Harvey, Len Ashurst, and Jimmy Monty were missing Jimmy Monty was missing for the first few games of that tour. He was playing for the England under 23s and joined the tour later on. And Bobby Kerr was missing as well. We were just talking about him last week. And I realised when I was sitting looking at this, oh God, Bobby Kerr wouldn't have been there. He had his broken leg, didn't he? It should have been an opportunity to bring a team together and to try and get over that divided dressing room. It seems to have just added to the furore that was going on in the dressing room. There were some young'uns there that should have been a tour that should have been a good experience for them. It might have been, but in all the wrong kind of ways, because Jim Baxter led a bit of a drinking fest on that tour. But the squad, for people that don't know that 67 squad, the young'uns that were there were Derek Foster, Billy Hughes, Colin Suggett, Jim Shoulder, Gowden, John O'Hare. They were the young'uns that were there. The squad, you had Cease Irwin, John Park, George Cannell, Brian Heslop, Jim Baxter, Neil Martin, George Hurd, and Geordie Mulhall. So some canny hands in that team. But you know what happened? They won 3, drew 5, lost 4, and finished second bottom of the group. And rather than showcasing football, I think Sunderland showed when they were across there everything that was wrong with that squad. There was all sorts going off, police intervention, players getting lost, because of the state that they were in, hotel rooms getting smashed up. Apparently, they were still paying for the damage that was caused 6 months after they got back. They were still receiving bills and stuff like that. What can you say? Or if folk were interested in finding out a bit more about that trip, there's a number of good Roker Report articles on it, and it was a dark sort of a dark 6-week period for the club. Didn't come out of it very well at all. That trip. So that's the twice that Sunderland have been there in the earliest there in the 50s and the 1960s. I know they've been there since, but they were the 2 that I had a look at, and they seemed 2 very, very contrasting tours.
Do we know much about the why in that 67 tour? Because obviously Sunderland went and played as a different team and a number of other English teams did. Was it an opportunity? I know you said earlier, Kelvin, it was about bringing the game to America and broadening the game and all that sort of stuff. But how was it organised? Like, were the club paid for the players to go and represent a different.
They were paid for. There were all the clubs that went were paid for by rich North Americans.
Yeah. Right.
It was like they paid to have these teams represent them in these, and there was like a Western division and an Eastern division. So there were lots of other teams there. Real Madrid, Leeds, and Liverpool were meant to be there, but the Football League, for some reason, stopped Liverpool and Real Madrid, Leeds from going. I cannot remember the reason for why, because other teams had to step in at late notice. I wish they'd stopped Sunderland from going. It might have saved with a bit of money, and it might have kept Ian McCall in a job, because it was only another half season after they got back from that he was sacked, and Alan Brown came in. And the irony of that is Alan Brown would not have brooked all that carry on a tour. It would have been a different kind of tour if he'd been organising it, I think, So I think that's my memory of that particular one, and the way those leagues were organised. An interesting concept, and the idea. I mean, I remember us talking in our On This Week pods about players that disappeared for the close season to go, and I think some of them played. There are a couple of lads played for Vancouver Whitecaps,
That's right,
wasn't it? And and the idea that a player could disappear for the best part of the close season playing football, where here we've got one tour that's almost a month long, but did seem reasonably leisurely, and then another tour that's 12 games long, involving quite a lot of travel, and a competitive kind of tour as well. Although I don't think we put up much. I don't think there was a lot of competition from the Sunderland team. I think they were struggling to make it onto the pitch, or some of them were struggling to make it onto the pitch. Shame for the youngsters that went. I think when you look at where they're at in their career, I mean, Colin Todd, Billy Hughes, Suggett, Jimmy Shoulder, John O'Hare, it should have been a great, I was sort of trying to put myself in their position, and thought that would have been brilliant as a young player about to break into the team, to go away with, such a squad of fine footballers on paper, but, to end up involved in what seems to have just been a debacle. And I think the contrast in the leadership of the two tours, Bill Murray seemed to have his finger on the pulse of the tour and the players. Ian McCall, well, it's difficult to say anything, but he didn't have any control over those players. North America, interesting venue for Sunderland over the years. There've been since, and obviously we'll get into that, but they were the two that stood out for me.
Very good. Well, we will take a very quick break at that point, and we'll be back after a couple of ads.
The entire summer of soccer is on PrizePicks, all 48 countries in every matchup, and if you rep your side before the round of 16 on PrizePicks, you can win a trip to the finals in New York. It's the biggest tournament ever, which means there's even more opportunities to cash in while you root for your favorite national sides and global soccer stars. Download the app today and use code CUP26 to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Download the app today and use code CUP26 to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picks app.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different, and Messi only trusts Duracell.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast for our deep dive into Sunderland's trips to America in pre-season. And we are going to go all the way back now to 1980 with a post-season trip to Miami, Andrew.
Yeah, there haven't been that many post-season trips in Sunderland history. Certainly, I can't think of many in more recent years. You normally wrap up the league season and that's it. The players go.
It's a funny concept, isn't it, really?
It is because, yeah, I was just going to say there, some of the players go their separate ways, go abroad with family and loved ones and all of that. You'd think that some of them, Martin, might be sick of the sight of each other if they've been playing and training for months on end. They could probably do with a break. So it's not common, but listen, who knows? Now that Sunderland are, one of the strongest teams in the Premier League, we might start doing some of these big money moves to all these weird and wonderful countries. But yes, yeah, it was a peculiar one, and the timing of this particular tour, as we'll come to find out, wasn't the best. It caused headaches for the club. And maybe, as I'm saying, that might be an answer. That might be a reason why you don't get as many post-season breaks, just because logistically they're hard to organise. At the time as well, so this trip at the end of 1980, there's a lot going on at the club already. 79-80, Kelvin will remember, I'm sure. It was the club's centenary season, and there was a lot of events going on to celebrate that. I mean, Kelvin, did you turn up at any of these banquets at the Mecca or the Mayfair? Were you getting your dancing shoes on?
You know me, Andrew. I cannot resist an opportunity to get a wee dance with Marilyn Monroe, so or Miss Sunderland. Yeah, I always remember going to a function round about that time. I'm sure it was part of the 79 celebrations, and we're in the Mecca. And that was the occasion, lads. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but where I did bump Bobby Kerr in the toilets at one of those functions, if you can remember that story, but I won't tell the whole story. So yes, I went to one or two, and it was interesting, all that, because all that part of the Morpeth supporters branch, and we organised stuff as well, and players came and what have you. So there was a lot going on, not just in Sunderland, but around about the area in terms of celebrating that 79 centenary.
Well, that's it. And sorry to disappoint listeners, I don't have any wild stories about footballers in toilets or dancing with Marilyn Monroe for the rest of this pod. It's all rather boring in comparison. But yeah, you're right, Kelvin. There was branch dues. There was these big banquets they had. The club brought out a book. We played England, like an England select team. We invited a team over from Paraguay to play. We were in the five-a-side tournament, and I forgot what newspaper it was. The one
Daily
at Wembley.
Daily Express, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
At Wembley Arena. That season, we held an England B international at Roker. So, excuse me. There's a lot happening around the club and you can see that we're becoming more commercialized than ever before. There's all of these events, and if you read through programs from the time, from like kind of the mid to late 70s onwards, the club are trying to generate cash, not just on a match day when people are turning up through the gates, but they're putting on corporate events, golf days. They used to host a lot of events at the Washington Training Complex, if you remember. I think we even, fans could hire out the facilities and all sorts. This season, the 1979-80 season, the club are pushing big time in the programme the Dixielanders Music Hall, which was a function suite that was open at Roker Park six nights a week. You could go there. There was like food, there was entertainment, there was a Roker Park restaurant that was open on non-match days. From what I can gather, if you were lucky, you could be sat there having your dinner and you'd be sat next to whoever the star of like the latest show at the Empire was. I think that would be a place the Empire would send their guests to for a slightly posher meal. As well, there was the Roker Park suite that you could hire out. These were all in the offices they built in 1966 as part of the World Cup at the back of the main stand. These suites were all there, and the club are really making a push to use those. Roker Bingo at the time, that's a huge thing. That's about bringing money into the club. Merchandising is becoming more formalized. There's a club shop, more like what we would see now, where the club have got deals lined up with different sports kit providers. A big figure in all of this is a fella called Corny O'Donnell. Do you remember his name, Kelvin, from the time?
Corny O'Donnell, I tell you, that bugger promised me 1973 FA Cup final ticket if I became a Roker bingo agent, and I never got the ticket. I was selling bloody Roker bingo tickets like fury, trying to get a ticket, and I never got a ticket. So every time you mention his name, the hairs stand up on the back of my neck.
Well, to be fair, I was going to say that this bloke was a bit of a character and probably somebody who deserves his own deep dive at some point. But maybe, Kelvin, if we do that, we'll not ask you
the bugger. I'll tell you, I'll deep dive him.
Yeah. Well, you've just proven the point there. He'd been at the club for some time already. He'd been there for most of the 70s. He remained at the club for a long period after this tour, I think, until like the mid 1980s. So he spent a canny old chunk of time at Roker Park. In this era, he was promotions manager, and this tour was his baby. He saw this as a way to get the club's name out there and, crucially, make a bit of money on it, because it wasn't just a tour for the players. It was a tour in which the fans were invited to come along. I dare say, Kelvin, your invite was revoked, though, because he didn't fancy getting
He's still waiting for it.
Yeah. He didn't fancy getting chased up and down the plane.
Aye. Yeah. Corny O'Donnell. Charismatic character. I did meet him a few times, and he certainly was a larger than life kind of character. So he was. He must have been to persuade me to get out there selling bingo tickets as a 14-year-old, because all I wanted to do was listen to music and watch Sunderland and play football. So he did well persuading me to do that.
It's funny, Kelvin. I mean, he must have been quite a large figure in the club, because I couldn't tell you who Sunderland, like who does the similar role at Sunderland now. I don't even know if there is a similar role. But around this time, wherever you looked, Corny O'Donnell was photographed in the programme, handing out prizes to people, or the club would turn up with somebody like a fan who was 100 years old or whatever. They'd turn up with a cake, and it wouldn't be a player, it wouldn't be a manager. It was Corny O'Donnell who was like in the photograph handing over the cake and saying, "Oh, thanks for your support." And he was always in the echo as well. You know, this was a bloke who we saw a lot of, and his job was to get Sunderland's name out there. The game, as I say, was changing. The club are becoming switched on to the fact that you need to be more aware commercially of things. You can't just survive on one home game every 2 weeks. The tour itself, it's announced in January 1980, and Bill Bradshaw, friend of the pod, he talks about the scheme in the Journal on the 22nd of January. There'd been a press conference held at Roker Park the day before to announce this big new idea, this big trip to America that was going to happen. The players had just come back from a warm weather visit to Spain, so they obviously had a taste for traveling and exploring. The fact that the fans, though, are getting the chance to mix with the players, and there's social evenings announced. This is the difference here. This is why it's then being talked about months in advance in the papers. I don't think Sunderland or many clubs had ever done anything like this before. So it was a talking point, and it was all about trying to attract the fans to come over. They make a big thing in the paper about how the players are going to be getting put up in a 5-star hotel in the Miami area, and that the fans are going to be put in hotels of a similar stature nearby. So, you know, it's being announced as this like trip of a lifetime. Come abroad with the club, come abroad with the players, mix with the players, and have this holiday, this once in a lifetime opportunity. And apparently within hours of these articles in the press and within hours of the press conference, O'Donnell is saying we've had a lot of interest. The club are thinking about chartering extra planes because so many fans want to come along. There's apparently been lots of corporate firms have taken up block bookings. So they've seen the potential of the trip and thought, oh, if we get on board with this, we'll get a bit of good publicity. There was a, quote, leading Washington-based superstore, which I don't know why they didn't just say this. It will have been the Saver Centre in the galleries, because at that time there wasn't many other leading Washington-based superstores, I don't think. They took up a lot of tickets, presumably like a goodwill gesture for employees, or maybe they were going to make tickets available for customers, something like that. So very quickly, it's gaining traction. People are talking about it. People want to be part of it. I don't quite know why, but on the 3rd of February, in the Sunday Mirror, there's a letter appears from a W.D. Wyness of Portland Road, which is in Plainsy. It's in Plains Farm. He wasn't too pleased with the trip, and makes the point in this what's called the angry column in the Sunday Mirror. Which I mean, just the name of it tells you what type of correspondence you're going to get. He's not best pleased, or he or she is not best pleased that Ken Knighton, the Sunderland manager, has been on this Spain trip recently. He's made lots of visits to international countries, seemingly to try and scout players. We've said in the past, Ken Knighton seemed absolutely intent on buying overseas players and making them a success at Roker Park. WD Wireless isn't best pleased that the club are now on their jollies again, heading over to Miami. And the editor, Peter Shaw, he's made my hit list because his response is, I don't blame anybody that wants to get away from Sunderland as often as they can. So, Peter Shaw, not best pleased with you.
Yeah, I wish that bloke, Andrew, that bloke that wrote the letter in, I wish his second name had been 40. That would have been a grand little thing to read out there, you know.
If your name was WD-40, you would not be writing letters to the paper. You'd be taking your parents to court and getting down the registration offices trying to get your name changed by deed.
You'd guarantee there'd be squeaky clean letters, though, wouldn't you?
Bit of a slippery character, though, I've heard.
Hey. Yeah, he'll be writing to it.
Aye. The angry column of the Roker Report website. 9th of February, so a couple of weeks after the big announcement to launch this trip, Sunderland play at home to Burnley. Ends up being a big 5-0 win, actually. I think, Kelvin, you've spoken about this before. I think that was a game where Stan Cummins, did he get 4 goals? Was it 4 goals?
What, man, what a game that was. What a game.
So it was a decent day, and if you'd bought the Roker Review, you would have read a big in-depth article about the trip. As I say, it was the first home game since the news. This article is kind of like officially launching what the club are describing as a mouth-watering trip that hopefully would follow Sunderland grabbing one of those 3 much-coveted promotion places. And you can imagine what a knees up there will be in the States. So they're trying to get people. They're trying to get people excited for it.
They should have got a testimonial from Ken Chisholm, shouldn't they?
Well, wasn't Ken Chisholm the one who in the 50s was allowed to fly the plane for a period because of his RAF background?
He was.
So yeah, I'm not sure if you were booking your deposit, you would be too pleased at the thought of one of the Sunderland 1979-80 squad. We're going to have a little stint in control of the plane.
Barry Siddle will be flying the plane.
Yeah. Hey, maybe, I don't know, maybe that would have attracted people. I don't know.
Hey, how are you, lads? How are you? What goes on tour stays on tour. Come on. Knuckle down.
Yeah, there's a limit to it, though. And when your flight's being taken over by a player, you might have justification to be a little worried. But yeah, this article, it's whipping up a frenzy. And it goes on to say, the novel plan is for the Sunderland players, manager, and some of his staff, plus directors and fans, to jet out to Miami on the same flight on Monday, the 12th of May, just a couple of days after the FA Cup final. Now, that last line there, unfortunately, turns out to be quite prescient. So keep the cup final in mind for when we get further down. O'Donnell, again, he says in this article that he's been deluged by inquiries. There's been plenty of people putting down their 50 quid deposits. The hotel that the fans are going to be staying at has now been downgraded to a 4-star hotel. Breakfast was going to be provided, and there was going to be a half-day excursion involved. although if you'd looked at the original details, the suggested potential destinations were places like the Kennedy Space Center or Disneyland. Well, you're not going to get those done in half a day. So the goalposts are shifting ever so slightly already. You know, things are being scaled back. Undeterred, though, the article continues. You'll be visiting a really fabulous place with hot sunshine guaranteed. There is also, the prospect, and this was the main attraction that the trip was built around. There is the prospect to watch the lads take on the Fort Lauderdale Strikers at Lockhart Stadium in Florida on Wednesday, the 14th of May. And when you think they're talking about setting off on the plane on the 12th of May, to then be playing on Wednesday, the 14th, that's pretty soon after touchdown. And the players aren't going to get much chance to
Tight schedule,
acclimatise,
isn't
are
it?
they? It is. And again, that will prove to be a problem as we go. It's the assistant manager, Frank Clark, who kind of does the managerial duties with regards announcing this. So you've got a lot of stuff from O'Donnell, and then the article goes on to quote assistant manager Frank Clark. He was the one who was at the press conference also, who announced the details. Ken Knighton was taking a back seat almost. Anyway, Frank Clark describes it as a fabulous idea. The first time the club has incorporated a trip with a holiday for the fans. The great thing would be to go out having won promotion, but this isn't a reward for the players. We expect them to be shattered by May, and this is a way to get the season out of their systems, which does sound like a reward to me, but maybe that's me being a bit picky. In reality, it's a way of starting our preparation for next season, whether or not we have managed to win promotion. It will be a break for the players. Then they will have another 6 weeks or so off before we get underway again. So the club are trying to say it's not just a jolly up. They're trying to say it's going to be good for the players, good for their fitness, good to help them end the season. They're already talking about it'll form part of their preparations for the following season. There's the commercial aspect about the club's name being put out there in America, but also, this is really important, they're at pains to say that this is a self-financing package. It's not going to cost the club anything. And I got the impression throughout all of this that not only were the fans paying the costs, I've got the impression Sunderland were looking to make a bit of a healthy profit out of this as well.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, Andrew, have you got the actual price of that trip that was offered to the supporters? Have you got that in front of you?
Yes, it changed a couple of times again. As you go through it in the months between it being announced and everybody setting off, there's a couple of differences that the price fluctuates a bit. Now, where are we? Right, yeah. So originally you were quoted a price of £389 for what, to be fair, was a 14-day break and flights to America and back. So, it wasn't, I don't think people were going to expecting this to be like a bargain booze up type of effort. It was being packaged as a relatively expensive but high class affair. As I say, it was originally $389. By April onwards, when there's only a few seats left, the price has gone up to £416 plus insurance. And oddly enough, I don't know if this was a condition of being allowed entry into the States at the time. You had to show that you had a passport with at least 10 years on it. Now, I don't even know how long your passport. I don't know how your passport only lasts 10 years.
Usually,
at the moment, doesn't it? Aye. So yeah, that was a thing fans had to be aware of, and the club were offering assistance to apply for your passport. So we're really keen to get people coming along. As I say,
your average man on the terraces wasn't going to be able to afford a trip like that. They were obviously aiming for a certain category of fan at the time. Is what I remember, because I do remember looking at it and being dead disappointed at the price of it. I was quite excited about sitting next to Joe Bolton on the flight. I could have seen me and Joe having a bit, on the flight over to Miami. But
Joe might be flying the plane, Kelvin.
Yeah, if Joe Bolton tells you he wants to fly the plane, he's flying the plane.
He's going to fly the plane.
He's flying the plane. Yeah. And just a little point about Frank Clark. It struck me an observation about him and Knighton's relationship. Frank Clark often spoke for them too, and I think that was because Knighton was quite. Whenever you used to hear him speak, now I used to like him, but he was quite abrasive, and quite sort of to the point, and Clarkey had a wee bit more floweriness about him. He was a gentler kind of character, I think, Clark than Knighton. So that was probably one of the reasons why, he'd probably done his media training, Frankie Clark, whereas Ken hadn't quite got round to doing that, I think.
Well, Clark at Forest had obviously seen Brian Clough and Peter Taylor working together, and Peter Taylor often took a more forward-facing role than a lot of assistants at that time. And interestingly enough, Kelvin, I wasn't going to mention this, but when I was researching this, I did read a snippet in one of the papers at the time. Ken Knighton had moved to the area now that he was full-time manager, but had deliberately bought a house up in Newcastle and had deliberately sent his kids to a school in Newcastle because he didn't want them turning up to school every day and kids rushing to see him and, "Oh, mister, can I have your autograph?" Or kids talking to his children and, making a thing about who he was. He didn't want to particularly advertise his position in the public eye and
bit of
put that
privacy
pressure
for
on
his family.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue, would a Sunderland manager sending his kids to a school in Newcastle have actually just invited more grief for them? But there you go. So yeah, Frank Clark, as that's interesting that Kelvin, maybe he was one who was able to give this the big sell. As we've said, it's constantly being mentioned that the trip's self-financing and if you read between the lines, hoped to be a money-making scheme. O'Donnell, going back to this article, it's clear he's the driving force behind it all. He's hoping for this to be a forerunner to Sunderland returning the following season or the following summer as part of an 8-team tournament that O'Donnell was trying to help organise. Now, I can see Kelvin trying to remember any mention of that. It didn't go ahead in the end, or if it did, Sunderland weren't part of it.
Didn't sell enough bingo tickets to fund it, I think.
Aye. Well, we saw in 1967 that they were trying to get football launched big time in America, and they brought across all these European and all these British clubs. It looks as if they were trying to do it again in the 80s. It didn't quite happen for various reasons, but the aim of this first trip for O'Donnell was that Sunderland would go and put in like a good public relations job for English football and try and get interest growing, try and make people take an interest in football and in Sunderland. O'Donnell name checks Bernard Wallace of the Plaza Group Incentive Travel, which just sounds so 80s, it's unreal. They're working alongside the club, setting up this getaway, and the man who's handling it from the American side of things was a former Football League referee called Gordon Hill. I don't know if either of you seen that name.
I remember the name.
I think he was senior. I think he took charge of a cup final at Wembley. He'd moved over to America for his day job. He'd been a teacher and a head teacher, and he'd moved over to work in the American education system. And once there, he'd started getting involved in American soccer and refereeing games over there. So he's involved in this. O'Donnell is telling people that through Gordon Hill, there's been news about Sunderland in the local press in Miami. People are getting excited. There's a lot of locals from Miami are keen to see this game when Sunderland come over. Of course, as well, there's a lot of expats in that part of the world who are chuffed to bits to find that Sunderland are heading across. It's being really built up. There's a quote from Hill trying to talk about how, soccer in America is colourful, it's entertaining. Quite interestingly, quite pointedly, he says, there's no violence, there's no hooliganism or anything. And then he says, there will be plenty of fun with gorgeous cheerleading girls, marching bands, and the like. Now, I'm not sure if the marching bands were also gorgeous or just the cheerleaders. But when you watch old TV now, and at the start there's a disclaimer that says some of the attitudes and language do not reflect current expectations. You might need to put that at the start of the pod, because Sunderland AFC were trying to get fans to travel abroad to see these gorgeous cheerleading girls. Also, this story is unbelievable. If you don't believe me on this story, I can fully understand it. But we're talking about commercialism and the club trying to raise income. I remember in the late 70s, the club started selling a line of official Sunderland AFC calendars that were advertised in the programme. But one of them was a hybrid of Sunderland AFC and Topless Models. I mean, these were advertised in the programme. And unless this is
what a barefaced cheek they've got doing something like that. Yeah.
It sounds like a bizarre fever dream, but honest to God, there was adverts for these in the programme. And can you imagine now if a football club was selling officially licensed softcore porn calendars? I mean, I know I joke sometimes.
Most things come back around, don't they? I'm sure that will, but
it's just a sign of the time,
Calvin.
Andrew.
I know I like to joke that Omar Aldrete is a good-looking boy, but it's not quite. My Sunderland annual on the wall is not quite of that nature. So we are in an era where making money is becoming important. The Leicester edition of the Roker Review in the middle of March, they keep giving you updates on this trip, and they keep telling you, tickets are selling fast. There's only so many tickets remaining. If you want to come along, you're going to have to move quick. There's also various competitions being announced where you could buy tickets. So if you weren't able to buy outright and officially join this tour, you could win a ticket. either via the Roker Bingo, which, as Kelvin has said, has actually been set in stone for a few years now and is bringing in a lot of income to the club. But there was various other competitions in the region being held in conjunction with partners. One of the first winners of the Roker Bingo tickets is Mr. and Mrs. James Rodwell of Runnymede Way in Red House. And as you know, lads, I absolutely love it when people's addresses get printed in the programs at the time. It staggers me. It just absolutely blows my mind that everybody now knows that Mr. and Mrs. Rodwell of Runnymede Way are going to be out of the country for 2 weeks, presumably leaving the house empty.
House is empty, yeah.
Thanks very much. O'Donnell in this latest update says there's been a fabulous response, there's been a fabulous take-up of seats, so much so that the first plane is filled to capacity. And these were big planes that were being chartered. You know, there were hundreds of people on this plane. So the first one's full. They've had to get a second plane involved. There's also, again, you know, when I talk about shifting the goalposts slightly, it's now mentioned that instead of the flights being from Newcastle, they're going to be from Heathrow. So if you'd bought at the start, you're probably thinking, right, so I'm now going to have like a couple of days stuck on a bus as well as everything else. 19th of March in the paper. Now, maybe this is what you're saying, Kelvin, about Ken Knighton maybe wasn't always the best at public relations or what have you. He's using the trip in the papers to encourage the players to up their efforts in training and what have you. There's only 16 players going to be taken out to America. This is out of a group of around 20. When you think nowadays there's no expense spared and every single member of the party will be going to America this summer, that's pretty mad. But rather than saying anything about promotion is the carrot, I want players to knuckle down and get the club promoted, he's saying I want players to knuckle down and win a place on this trip to America. It's it's really bizarre. So Knighton is talking in the press and using this trip to America is something for the players to aim for. We then get to the 22nd of March, the Swansea edition of the Roker Review. That tells us that against Leicester, John Hawley had been on the pitch drawing lottery tickets, giving out prizes for this trip to America. The Swansea game itself ends up being a 1-1 draw. And on that day, Gary Rowell is the one who's invited onto the pitch. He pulls out a winning ticket from the hat for a competition that's ran in conjunction with Presto Supermarkets. They were a big firm in the Northeast at the time. The tickets to Miami that Gary Rowell pulls out, they go to a Mr. and Mrs. Jackson of Blythe. Neither of those people were at the Swansea game on the day, so they were told by telegram that they'd won this trip to America. The reason Mrs. Jackson wasn't at the game was because she was working that afternoon as a Roker bingo seller. So a Roker bingo seller wins an apparently separate lottery to win a trip to America. But who on earth is buying Roker bingo tickets in Blythe on a Saturday afternoon when the team are playing at home? That's going to be a hard sell knocking on the doors.
It doesn't quite add up, does it? I think there's a rabbit away somewhere with that one.
Yeah, it just feels a bit peculiar.
Sure she wasn't from Morpeth?
Say that again?
I was wondering whether she was from Morpeth rather than Blythe.
One of
Oh, I
Kelvin's.
think you know what that Blythe crew are like, man. They're just like that across in Blythe, you know.
But strictly speaking, she won the ticket via Presto, and it's unfortunate that Chris isn't with us, because Chris and I, we both grew up in a similar area, and I was going to quiz Chris on whether he remembered getting dragged around the Presto on Station Road in
Yeah.
Fulwell by his mum when
You
he was
know
a
when-
kid, like I did.
Yeah. You know when Gary Rowell pulled the ticket out of the hat? Did he shout, "Hey, presto"?
I thought I was going to be a hat trick joke there, but you know,
He was injured, and so was John Hawley. So they were obviously wheeling out the players that weren't playing at the time to do those jobs. If they wanted to go on the tour, they were going to have to work for it. Yeah.
Kelvin, that "Hey Presto" joke, I think, is the perfect time for us to have a little break now. Martin might want to drop a few adverts in here while we come to terms.
I think we will do that. We will be impressed in Presto, and I don't think you'll hear any Presto ads in the break, but you never know what's going to crop up. So yes, we'll be back after a couple of ads. We'll see you soon.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18+.
This episode is brought to you by Google Health. Stop chasing someone else's definition of health. What matters is what's healthy for you. Google Health offers a new kind of coach built with Gemini for effortless tracking, sleep insights, and holistic coaching tailored to you. Visit googlestore.com to learn more and start a new relationship with your health. Requires Google account, Google Health app, internet, and Google Health Premium subscription. Features subject to change. Availability and results vary. Not intended for medical purposes. Works independently of Gemini apps. Check responses for accuracy.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast, and you are joining us for our deep dive into our 1980 trip to America. And before the break, you'll have heard all sorts of info from Andrew about tickets getting drawn, people from Blythe suspiciously winning some tickets, definitely not Kelvin or any of his associates. And I will hand it back over to Andrew to continue the story.
Yes, cheers. The latest Roker bingo winner, congratulations to Miss Eaton of Edgemond Court in Leechmere. So again, her whereabouts are going to be known. This is why I like looking at people's old addresses, because when I saw that, I thought, Edgemond Court, whereabouts is that in Sunderland? I don't recognise it. So there's me wasting 15 minutes of my life looking at flats for sale on Edgemond Court in 2026. 12th of April, Sunderland are at home again. We're at home to Orient, and there's another big push in the programme. By this point, there are only 2 spots left on this supposed trip of a lifetime. They are still talking about the whole party, so players, managers, staff, directors and fans all leaving Roker Park 6:30 a.m. on Monday, the 12th of May. They're on the coach to Heathrow, then a direct flight to Miami. The fans are now being told they're going to get put up in the Marco Polo Hotel on Miami Beach. As we say, the prices are now £416. Hazel Gordon of the Travel Club gives some quotes in this article. And again, talk about different times. The article said she had been up to her pretty little eyes taking bookings for the American adventure. Bless her. Apparently, there'd been fans from London, Hertfordshire, Blackpool, all over signing up to go on this journey. Hazel at the time was doing double shifts because it was the Easter period and the club had done a rather cheaper, rather less glamorous trip to the double header to Wrexham and Shrewsbury. the away trip. I think Kelvin went down on that on the premise of
And-
buying some milk.
I
Jumped on a.
didn't
that
go on
you,
the club
Paul?
trip. I
No,
didn't go on the
no.
club trip, but I did go for that. It was a great Easter weekend, that, by the way, for the club and for supporters. It was brilliant.
Kelvin, if you'd gone on the official trip, it would have only cost you £14.50, by the way.
Ooh, you
Plus his
bugger.
milk. Plus his milk.
Yeah.
Plus his milk.
Yeah.
Monday, the 14th of April, the Roker Park suite, which I mentioned earlier, there was going to be a full briefing with Hazel, with her colleagues. Plaza Travel were going to be there. And of course, the man of the moment, Corny O'Donnell, they were all going to be there to talk people through the itinerary and make arrangements for this trip. This was the day before Sunderland were due to play West Ham United in the league at home at Roker Park. But do you know when I mentioned about the cup final earlier?
Yeah.
People are starting to click on that there's a potential issue here. The game against West Ham has to be cancelled because the weekend just gone, they had played in the FA Cup semi-final against Everton. It was a draw, so it was having to go to a midweek replay at Ellen Road. That was due to be played on Wednesday the 16th. So Tuesday the 15th, the match has to be scrapped. And at this briefing that the club are holding, people are starting to feel a little uneasy. West Ham, they weren't expected to be, I mean, they're in Division 2 with us, obviously, because we're playing them in the league.
Yeah.
They weren't expected to be getting to near the cup final. The match against them's been postponed. It had originally been postponed in February due to snow and ice, but since then there'd been a few schedule clashes because they're progressing, and there's starting to be whispers that if West Ham get to the final, it's going to impact Sunderland's tour, and it's going to impact hundreds of supporters who've splashed out big money to go abroad with the team. That ends up on the 24th of April being a Football League hearing, trying to get this game actually set, trying to get a date planned for it. It's in West Ham's interests to play it before the cup final because their captain, Billy Bonds, has a suspension to serve. But it also suits us because we want this league game out of the way and done and dusted before this massive trip, which there's a lot of money tied up in it, before this massive trip's sent to take place. The problem is Sunderland are in a promotion race and rival clubs are not happy about Sunderland playing West Ham a couple of days before the cup final because they think West Ham will take it easy and they think they'll rest players and Sunderland will have a bit of a gimme and get the points easily. So this hearing dictates that, right, tough, the game will have to be Monday, the 12th of May, unless, just to complicate matters further, unless the final goes to a replay. If the final goes to a replay, this trip could be off altogether because Sunderland are meant to be in America playing on the 14th of May, but they could very well end up being double booked and be having to stay in the UK to take on West Ham when their cup final commitment's out of the way. But as it is, the league game is to take place on the 12th of May. That is the same day everybody was meant to have been down the road on their jollies, setting off for Heathrow. It's a huge frustration for the club. It's a huge frustration for the fans. Whilst they might be able to rearrange the travel arrangement for the players, there's no mention for the punters being able to cancel or rearrange or anything. They're locked in. They've paid their money. Their departure on the Monday morning is set in stone. So this great idea of let's have a post-season trip. Why hasn't anybody thought of this before? well, this is why they're not that common, because there's other affairs to attend to and what have you. The fans, not only are they watching Sunderland in a high pressure promotion chase, not only are they desperate for Sunderland to go up, the fans who are going are also hoping they can get it done and dusted before this final fixture, because they're not going to be there to see it. Now, Kelvin, you mentioned, didn't you, that maybe the common man or woman on the terrace wasn't going to be able to afford to go on this trip. But if you're stumping up around 400 quid, that suggests that you, to go on a trip with the players, that suggests that you must be a pretty loyal fan. So you are the type of person who's going to want to be in the ground on the night Sunderland potentially earn promotion. So, you know, what was meant to be this big, nice trip of a lifetime occasion, it's become a massive headache for everybody.
And they didn't get it done either. It was really, really tight for those promotion spots. As I recall, Chelsea, Birmingham, QPR, you know, they were right in the mix, and it was just nobody was knocking themselves out. You know, everybody was winning or drawing, and it was the tension was just building up to a rate. You know, you could see why. In a way, and I do remember thinking this at the time, I was going to say two things to you. I remember thanking God that I hadn't the money. And when he mentioned Hazel, the travel manager, you know, she was a force of nature in the offices. She was hard. I've actually, I remember I've met her in the offices, and that she was a force of nature at the time. A really popular sort of lass with the fans and that. You know, I don't think she took many prisoners, but she was a popular addition. But no, it was tight all the way, and we didn't get the job done. We really didn't.
That's what I was going to say. Don't worry, Kelvin. We are going to come to this, because we've always had this joke about Sunderland. Whenever you're relying on them to do something, they go and do something. And bless her, Hazel needed to be popular with the fans, because Corny O'Donnell wasn't by now. You've said before he's made assurances to you about getting a cup final ticket in 1973. On the 26th of April, shortly after this hearing with the Football League, he has to come out. He's quoted in the Chronicle, giving assurances. The supporters will fly out as arranged on Monday the 12th, and I will be with them, even though it will break my heart to miss the West Ham match. Now, I reckon the supporters are probably going to be pretty annoyed about this as well, Corny, considering it was your blooming idea in the first place. So they're not going to have much. They're not going to have much sympathy with him that they're missing. They're missing the game. They're in exactly the same position, and I just like how he's like, "Oh yes, I'll give assurances that the supporters will fly out as arranged." They're thinking, yeah, but we don't bloody want to fly out as arranged now. We want you to rearrange. We want you to do something about this. Sure enough, 3rd of May, Sunderland are away at Cardiff. O'Donnell and the travel club have got even more on the plate, because there's around 10,000 fans travelling down to Wales for this do-or-die game against Cardiff. The club, other coach operators, they're having to hire in extra buses from firms outside the region to get this like mass travelling support down to watch Sunderland play. We don't win. We needed to win to confirm promotion that day. We don't win. We draw 1-1, which means that after the cup final the following weekend, Sunderland do have to play their final game against West Ham, and there's something riding on it. Not only is something riding on it, hundreds of fans will literally be mid-air when the game kicks off. Up in the sky, hundreds of miles away, couldn't be further from Roker Park if they tried. And the only reason that they're doing that is because they're such mad Sunderland fans that they've signed up to an official club trip. So, pretty sad, pretty unfortunate set of circumstances. And if that wasn't enough for them, the weekend everybody was down in Cardiff. Over in Miami, racial tensions have led to mass rioting. There is looting. There is people being beaten up. Unfortunately, 15 people die. There's hundreds in hospital, both civilians, members of police, the army, I can't remember if it's the army or the Coast Guard. They get drafted in, but there's people in hospital with gunshot wounds, stabbings. Now, let's say this is not ideal. The club are having to assure fans that these issues have not spread to the area where they're going to be staying. The trip is taking place in a different part of Miami. But because of the rioting, there's the local population are subject to curfews. There's going to be curfews in place when this Sunderland party arrive in America. But fear not, lads and lasses, if you're part of the Sunderland party, you're not going to be subject to those curfews. So, I mean, I don't know what you're thinking at that point. So yeah, there you go. The mood is not great for these people, bless them. 12th of May comes. We play West Ham on the Monday night. Ironically, given the fact that clubs previously didn't want us to play ahead of the cup final because they thought West Ham would toss it off. Well, by playing on the Monday night after West Ham have won the cup in a shock, a second division team winning the cup was a big story. So of course they're all on the pop. They're all enjoying it. And by Monday night, the players are like openly stating and joking on that they're not giving the game the full attention. Sunderland win, they go up, happy days. They celebrate with champagne in the dressing room, and then they're up early the following morning to fly over to the States to catch up with the fans. Just bizarre. You couldn't have written that script, and as you were one of those people going as a fan, you could not have envisaged that doing this would have ended up with you missing out on one of the club's biggest days ever. I mean, at that point, I think it was only their third ever promotion, and you've not been there to witness it.
Unbelievable, isn't it, really?
It's staggering. Interestingly enough, just as a little side note, that West Ham game is an article in the programme with Ray Hudson, who's a former Newcastle player who by this point is playing for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. He had previously, though, as a youth, been on Sunderland's books. He was a schoolboy on the books in the Alan Brown era and had travelled. He lived in Gateshead, and I think he was one of these who went to Newcastle with his dad one weekend, went to Sunderland the next, just to take in first-team football. He used to travel regularly from Gateshead on a Saturday to come and watch Sunderland play. So there's this lad that we're going to be meeting up with who had been a kind of Sunderland fan and a kind of Sunderland player. In this article, no less than George Best is rating Hudson is one of the best midfielders in the North American Soccer League.
Huh.
So that's the angle there. They're trying to just one last chance, ramp up interest and say, look, we're going to be playing against a local lad. Do you remember Hudson, Kelvin? Is that a name
I
you
do.
know?
I do remember him for a couple of reasons. I didn't realise it Yeah, I went to school in Newcastle and played football across Newcastle. And one of my friends who was a little bit older than me was absolutely adamant that I'd played against him, but I had no memory of him at the time. And I do remember him. I think he was nicknamed Rocky, wasn't he? Rocky Hudson. And I'm sure he scores the goal for Fort Lauderdale in the actual game that's played, doesn't he?
Maybe not, Kelvin. We will.
Right.
we
Sorry,
will
I wasn't
see.
sure where you were going. Sorry.
No,
Spoiler alert here. Spoiler alert.
No, it's
aye.
all right. You've teed me up perfectly because I've bored you all to tears with the arrangements and the carry on. I'm now coming into the actual game. So after all of that chew, we play the game on the 14th of May. It doesn't actually get much traction back home in the local press. Bearing in mind they've been talking lots about the trip beforehand, they don't really touch on it. We never actually get to know the full lineup in the game. This match against the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. In fact, just to highlight this point about how important revenue is in the game at the time, the Hartlepool Daily Mail the day after, they only have 2 paragraphs on the game. Now, the Hartlepool Daily Mail at that point was like a sister paper of the Sunderland Echo. So really, normally, Sunderland's big stories were getting repeated verbatim in the Mail. On this day, they only bother with 2 paragraphs on the game because their main article on the back page is about an ongoing dispute that the authorities are having with the BBC and ITV, who are threatening to black out any clubs who take to the pitch with a sponsor on their kit. So the clubs are wanting to bring more money in. They're not being allowed to get front of shirt sponsors. I'm a little bit unsure why ITV didn't want to show teams with advertising on them, but there we go.
Because they wouldn't be getting paid for it. That's
Of
why.
Course. Yeah.
That's why the papers. When you mentioned right at the start, why they didn't just say who it was. In the galleries, I can't remember exactly who that was, but why they didn't say was they weren't getting paid for it. So they used to get these almost blackouts of, a large store, a large international firm, and you'd be like, why don't you just say, well, we're not going to say because we're not going to give you the advertising, and we're not going to advertise if you're not going to pay us.
That's fascinating. I mean, that's fascinating, and it's one of the reasons why the club are now having to put on these trips. That's because, like you say, that they're looking at the money. And interestingly enough, in the days before that West Ham game when Sunderland get promoted, there's a strike, a national strike on of newspaper printers. So in the days leading up to Sunderland playing West Ham, the staff at the Echo are getting really jittery because what's going to sell papers? Sunderland winning promotion. It's going to be the biggest story of the year. Well, in the build-up to the big game, they're not printing any copies of the paper because of this strike. The strike only ends and people only go back to work on the day of the game. So, yeah, it's all about money and it's all about people getting what they think they're due. So that's interesting, Kelvin. I'm glad you've told us that. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, the Hartlepool Mail are talking about this and talking about how sponsorship is an issue, which, as I say, in a roundabout way, is forcing the club down the lines of having to look outside the box to bring money in. The game, unfortunately, there's just under 5,000 there. That's even accounting for all of the expats who live in that part of the world and what have you. We never get to know the full squad. It's just not, unless somebody finds it, and please, if they do forward it to us, it isn't deemed important enough. We know that John Cook goes. He's a youngster who just broken through to the first team. He gets to go. Kelvin's mate Joe Bolton, he's name checked. Rob Hindmarch, Kevin Arnott, Mick Buckley, Alan Brown, Bob Lee, and Stan Cummins. We know they play, but we don't know much about the game. I mean, if you think about these trips to America that we're going to have when we're playing in Nashville and everywhere in a few weeks' time against Leeds, Wrexham, and Liverpool, there's going to be full match reports in the Echo. There's going to be full match reports on the club website. I dare say we'll do reaction pods on Haway The Podcast. They're going to get the proper treatment. Whereas back then, it was almost a case of, it's in America. We're not going to go too in depth into it. There's very little in terms of a match report, other than we're told that Alan Brown and Kevin Arnott put us 2-0 up, and then towards the end, Hudson gets a penalty for the strikers, scores, and it finishes 2-1. But that's a little bit convenient, isn't it? I mean, maybe I'm being unfair, but if you're trying to sell soccer in America, they love the stories, don't they? They love the story of, he's a Brit, he's an expat, he's come and set up home in America. He loves his life in America. It's the American dream and all of this. And, oh, what's this? He scores a goal against the team he used to support. It's nice, isn't it? It works well. So I wondered if that was all a little bit convenient. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm being unfair. But that's all we know about the game. Unless, of course, one of those fans who flew over wants to get in touch. I'd love to hear
good, wouldn't it?
That would be great.
To hear your recollections. We'll give you 5 minutes with Kelvin at the end to slag off. Bless him. Poor Corny O'Donnell. He's trying his best. He's trying to make the club some money, and he's getting grief. One thing we do know, Claudio Marangoni doesn't go on the trip because Ken Knighton wants him, basically tells him, just go away from the club, just clear off and get complete rest. I don't care where you go. I don't want to know a thing about it. I don't want to hear from you. Go, do not come back until next season. Because of the way the football calendars worked, he'd been playing football for about 18 months solid. His move when he came to Sunderland meant that he didn't get a pre-season as such. So he was told not to bother. Knighton, however, obviously does like it in Miami because he decides to stay back for an extra 10 days on his own. The club, the fans, the press, everybody, they all get sent back at the end of May, back to Wearside. Ken Knighton just puts his feet up in Miami for a bit on his own. Frank Clark is left to face the music when he gets back, when he's back on terra firma in England. And he's quoted as saying the trip was a success and that he was happy with the attitude of the players. He said they were great ambassadors for the club in English football in general, both in the match against Fort Lauderdale, which we won 2-1 and played very well, and also off the pitch. Their behaviour was magnificent. So they didn't have Billy Elliot sparking anybody out or anything like that. They apparently it was all very civilized, all very calm. Nobody got into trouble. Nobody was questioned by police. I think in that 60s tour, some of the players were questioned by police because they were using counterfeit money. Now, the police were willing to accept that it was an error and that the players claimed they were a bit green and didn't realise it was counterfeit money. But that could have been a scandal of epic proportions if the Americans wanted to deal with it in a separate way.
Jim Baxter was getting lifts home from the police, lifts back to the hotel. He had his own private taxi. These pubs that were on the night duty were picking them up and bringing them back to the hotel, man.
Well, sadly, there's no escapades like that this time around. It's not enough for Sunderland to be involved in a money spinning tour next year. They don't return to America that soon. The only real benefit that I can see is that the first game of the following season, we're back in the top flight. We beat Everton 3-1 in blistering heat at Roker Park. And Alan Brown, this is not the manager, Alan Brown. This is his namesake player. He quips that the conditions at Roker Park were just like playing in Miami again. So he was able to deal with the conditions. So, it did have a positive bearing on how the season started. But there you go. A trip to America, which should have been awesome, just ends up with a lot of fans feeling a little bit shortchanged and regretting their choice.
Yeah, unbelievable, isn't it? If you're going to use the phrase typical Sunderland in this podcast, that would be it, wouldn't it? Because only we could arrange a trip where the loyalist fans get to miss out on a game that secures promotion. Yeah, it's funny, but it's not funny, is it, Martin? I mean, if
Somebody
I was in that position,
we really need to hear from somebody that was on that trip. If anybody's listening,
I really hope somebody's
please get
listening
in
who
touch,
was on
guys.
it.
Yeah,
I would,
please,
if I was
please
in
get
their
in touch.
shoes, exactly like Kelvin says, please get in touch, because if I was in your shoes, I would have been absolutely gutted. I would not have been happy. But there you go. There was our little jaunt across the pond in 1980.
Very good.
Yeah,
And we've had a few since as well, haven't we? We've had a few. People will remember, I think, under Tony Mowbray, we went out there and played a few games, and certainly under Dick Advocat, we travelled out there, and Mick McCarthy as well.
We did go with Dick Advocat, and I should have told you before. In the 1967 tour, Dick Advocat played against Sunderland in the very first game for Den Haag. And Den Haag Sunderland started that tour like they meant to go on. We were hammered 6-1 off Den Haag, inspired by Dick Advocat, who was playing. There you go. How's that for a bit of symmetry?
That's excellent.
I like that.
Brilliant. The one, it always makes me laugh, and Andrew, you sent the pictures over to us before we recorded, but I remember this vividly from the programmes in the 90s. This again was a post-season trip, wasn't it? Was it 94 under Mick Buxton, where he took the lads on a 2-week trip to Florida, and they were supposed to play a game. I think they did allegedly play a game against a Florida West Coast select team. Although I think they were due to play a golf of Florida Select 11. So whether that's the same team, whether it's something different, who can tell? All the pictures in the programme, which must be from the start of next season, just all the lads sat around having a drink. There's cans of Budweiser here, there, and everywhere, isn't there? There's a very sort of unofficial looking team photo with a mix of first team players. Seems to be some press people on the photo, and a couple of other people who I don't have a clue who they are, but apparently the players, and we won 4-0, and Borley got a couple, and Gary Howes and Don Goodman also scored. But again, I don't think that seemed to be the most official post-season tour you could ever imagine. I think it was more akin to the 60s one than the 50s, but
Did you see the photo, Martin, where the players are just getting transported to this game, which just looks to be in a field, by the way, not a stadium?
yeah.
They're getting transported in the back of a pickup truck.
Yeah.
But Martin, did you notice, crucially, it was 6 days after the cup final that year?
Yeah,
so the club had learned their lesson and thought, just in case.
Well, we'd been in the cup final 2 years previously, hadn't we? So, there might have been just bearing that in mind. But no, the photo was brilliant. Actually, we'll see if we can put them out on social media or with the podcast on the website, because some of the pictures are brilliant. I love the one of Sean Cunnington. Everyone else is getting ready for the game. We've all got the kit on, Sean Cunnington's obviously just come along for the ride because he's obviously injured, as he tended to be most of the time when he was with Sunderland. But he's just stood there in his shades and looking very 90s. Ball's there in his wife beater vest, so he's all looking good.
God.
Ian Rogerson's there without his shoulder in a sling, so things were looking up for Ian Rogerson. It's all happening.
It's just as well. This is why you don't organise trips with the fans, because I'm wondering now, did the lads from 1980, were they a bit gutted that they had to be on their best behaviour? At least in 1994, like you say, they're flipping going on fishing trips, and there's a photo of Alec Chamberlain doing sunbathing on the back of a yacht. They're with the best will in the world. They just want to get on it and have a few cans. They don't want to be doing social events and having to behave themselves.
The interesting thing with this is, says, Roker Review asked the lads to take the club's camera with them, and the best of the pics are below. I really don't think that's true. I think the best of the pics were left very much on the floor of the office. Because
I would pay big money to see some of them, Martin.
Oh,
they
fantastic,
quite interesting. Hey, I tell you what, mind, this game against whoever it was, the Gulf or the west coast of Florida, no mention of a hydration break. I don't know. I don't know how the lads coped.
Judging by these pictures, they wouldn't have needed a hydration break. I think the 2 weeks was one long hydration break, but there we go. All fun and games, eh? Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for researching all of that and sharing all of that with us, and Calvin, likewise, with the 50s and 60s stuff. Absolutely brilliant.
Enjoyable. A different one for us, lads, said there.
Yes.
But quite enjoyable.
I've just realised we're coming up to about an hour and 3/4 talking about the build up to a game which I myself accept was pretty low key, and we don't even have full record. It just wasn't even important enough to
record the team.
Record. Yeah, so I've rather than say thank you for your time, everybody, I think I owe everybody an apology for taking up too much of your time.
But these are all of the things that colour in everything else that we know, don't we? We can all look at the FA Cup final in '73 and see what the lineup was and watch it on the full match on video. Not many people watch this game.
No, not many watched it. Yeah. You don't get to ever watch it when Coney O'Donnell's in bloody bulbed. That's for sure.
I tell you what, Calvin, this might make you smile. And listen, I am not trying to do the dirty on Coney O'Donnell. I'm not trying to grief him or anything. But I do think we could do something on him in future, because he has a fascinating career at Sunderland. He has a few different positions. He tries a few ideas, and I can see why he wanted this trip. I can see why, had it gone differently, it could have been something amazing and could have brought the club a lot of goodwill and a lot of money. In 1983, 1984 the 1983-84 handbook, it's an official club publication that's on sale in the club shop to the fans. It has got photos of every single first team player in it. There is only one youth team player photoed in there. Guess whose son that happens to be in the so bless him. His son was obviously a talented footballer who was on the books at the club, but Coney O'Donnell there just allowed himself a little moment of hubris and managed to squeeze in a photo of his son in this book, which just made me laugh. I just thought that was really nice.
I wouldn't begrudge him that. Proud dad moments. Wouldn't begrudge him that.
You begrudge him everything else, though, Calvin.
That's right. Well, on that note, I
apologies.
think... what have you got, Andrew? What have you got?
I was going to apologise, man. It's the 82-83 handbook. Got to get these things right, if I'm going to be criticising people.
Excellent. Always good to have that to hand, Andrew.
Why? Why have I got that to hand? Why do I know the name of Sunderland's promotions manager from 1980? Why do I know the name of his son? That is not a life well lived. I'm sure they're a lovely family. Wish them all the best. I don't need to know what his boy was called.
Andrew, I'm glad to know you've got the handbook there. Have you got a first aid kit handy?
Why? What have I done? Why? What's happened now?
Just a handbook. Good lad. That handbook will come in handy.
I could access every Sunderland annual going within 2 seconds, but if you actually need me to look at any of my work manuals or anything like that, they're not next to me desk. I've got to go and fish them out from somewhere else in the house.
Good to see your priorities in the correct order anyway, Andrew. That's all good. Right, I think we'll wrap it up there, boys. So thank you very much, Andrew. Brilliant stuff.
Loved it. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
And thank you, as always, to Kelvin.
Yeah. Sorry, lads. I'll have to go. I have to fly.
I thought you were going to say you had some bingo tickets to sell, but there you go.
Ooh.
We will be back tomorrow on Haway The Podcast with another Sunderland pod coming out for you. I don't know what we've got lined up for tomorrow at the moment, but we will have something exceptionally good coming out tomorrow morning. But until then, it's goodbye from us.
Traditional home security only alerts you after a break-in, and that's too late. SimpliSafe is changing that.
Stop. This is SimpliSafe. Police are on the way.
We don't just alert, we stop crime before it starts. SimpliSafe, plan starting around $1 a day. Save 50% on your new system with professional monitoring at simplisafe.com/Spotify or with promo code Spotify.
Outdoor deterrence requires a SimpliSafe Active Guard outdoor protection plan starting at $49.99 a month. Visit simplisafe.com/licenses for alarm license information. Tennessee 2012.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.